Hey guys, Level Cap here, and today we have the patch notes for Battlefield Update 4.0, which will be launching tomorrow on April 19th. This update will bring VoIP functionality for both party and squads, the ability for the scoreboard to display at the end of the round, an overhaul for weapon attachments, and quite a few other bug fixes and minor changes, which we will be discussing as well. At the end of the video, probably talk a little bit about how much is changing with this game and whether or not it's going to be enough to bring back the player base, which is at a crazy low level right now. Alright, so without question, VoIP is probably one of the biggest features being added to this patch, and of course the end-around scoreboard functionality. That is all more or less self-explanatory. There'll be options for enabling the voice stuff in menu. What is lesser known is the new weapon attachment system and overhaul. DICE says their objective with this system was to create better differentiation between the attachments that would affect your guns in more obvious and meaningful ways. They give an example of each attachment on an assault rifle, with the Warhawk compensator getting improved recoil control at the sacrifice of reduced weapon accuracy. Then the Rattlesnake Light Grip increases your hipfire accuracy while reducing the accuracy while ADS. The Maul Hybrid Optic is getting its ADS speed decreased. Subsonic rounds are having their base recoil reduced. They're also reducing the muzzle flash visibility, and they decrease projectile velocity. Now, it seems like there's going to be some sort of UI element to try and better communicate when you're switching between attachments what it's doing to your weapon's performance. I didn't see anything to indicate that there would be actual number figures on there. It would just be like green increases ADS speed or red reduces ADS speed. So I don't know how much information is going to be communicated in-game with the UI. We'll just have to wait and see. Then there's actually a pretty impressive list of quality of life updates and bug fixes. The factory barrel and extended barrel descriptions now will display the correct fire rate changes. They fixed some weapons displaying the wrong ammo count for specific magazines. Adding and removing attachments in the plus menu will now always correctly apply their statistic changes, which there was a bug before that kind of messed with it. Underbarrel activations such as flashlights and laser sights will no longer be reset after getting revived. The ADS time on the BKS 8x optic is now appropriate, and there's actually just a lot of other UI and bug fixes with it. There's also an extensive list of weapon updates and bug fixes. Here are some of the highlights. The high-powered magazine for the AK-24 now shows the correct amount of bullets. They increase the PKP base recoil. The missing bullets for the M44 has been located. They increased the long-range damage on the SWS-10 light ammo from 35 to 40 at over 75 meters. They fixed an issue with the incorrect ammo pools to be set on the PP29. The AC-42 bullet damage drop-off has been increased. The AC-42 effective range has been lowered. They reduced the scope shake when firing the DM7 and VCAR. They fixed an issue which prevented bullets from dealing the correct amount of damage. Who knows what that issue specifically was, but that sounds terrifying. The reload prompt will no longer stop flashing when there's only a few bullets left in the magazine. Weapons in the collection screen will no longer compare to the weapon selection in the deploy screen, which was causing incorrect comparisons. They made improvements to the position and drop timing of dropped weapons. Again, these are just some highlights of the pretty extensive list. Let's talk about some of the specialist changes, and while this isn't the sort of specialist class system overhaul patch that I think a lot of people are hoping to get at some point, there are a lot of changes here. I'm just going to go over some of the highlights, but if you really want to get into it, there's just so many different changes to the different specialists. Irish's deployable shield can now be smashed by all vehicle types. They also resolved instances where Irish's fortification system couldn't be placed on angled terrain. Dozer now becomes vulnerable for a short period of time when his ballistic shield takes fire from heavy rounds such as tanks. Rao's cyber warfare suite now feels more responsive. Also, they replaced this Trojan network ability with the threat perception trait, which is from Pyke, and that just means that when Rao now takes damage from enemy fire, he will automatically spot the enemy for himself. Pyke got her threat perception trait replaced with the Eagle Eye trait, which means that players that take damage by Pyke are now spotted for everyone on your team. They also updated Pyke's mastery criteria to align with the new trait. Casper's recon drone can now descend with the crouch toggle buttons. Boris's sentry turret can now be destroyed when a tank runs over it. Sundance got a ton of fixes to her grenades. They fixed it so the anti-armor grenade doesn't lock onto targets that were too far away. The anti-armor grenades now filter their target by angle and distance in a more accurate way, and now have the same targeting priority for both air and ground vehicles. Anti-armor grenades no longer swap targets when they're already tracking a target, and they have reduced maximum range once unfolded and in flight. They have a different tracking radius for ground and air vehicles. They no longer target Irish's deployable cover or his shoot-down sentry. The grenades track properly if left sleeping on the ground instead of simply just exploding. They improve the speed when switching through Sundance's grenade belt. The scatter grenade detonation timing has been adjusted to explode quicker, and landing on rough terrain with Sundance no longer causes her to bounce up in the air in kind of a goofy way. Moving on to McKay, they made it easier for McKay to grapple onto moving vehicles, which could add to some only in battlefield moments, and they resolved the issue where smoke stopped his grapple from working. Now again, these are highlights. There are more changes in there if you want to read through it. Sundance got some pretty significant updates to her grenade, which should just make it more logical, more controllable. You should have a better idea of what's going on with your grenades when you throw them. And also Rao and Pike getting different passive traits is pretty cool too. That'll change up their gameplay a little bit. All right, let's go over some of the other highlights. They adjusted ribbons to make them easier to unlock across all modes, especially in Rush. XP from support actions has been increased, while XP from objective actions has been decreased to compensate. I picked out a few examples. Healing has gone from 5 to 20 XP. Enemies disrupted with EMP has gone from 10 to 20 XP. Repairing has gone from 5 to 20. Resupply from 5 to 20. Rangers being destroyed has gone from 25 to 75. Objectives being neutralized has decreased from 250 down to 200. Objectives being captured has gone down from 375 to 200. Repairing a ranger now correctly triggers the repairing XP event. The fire extinguisher's freezing effect in the heads-up display is now less intense, and I think the timing of those extinguishers has also been changed. This was actually mentioned under the kaleidoscope section of the patch notes, but I hope it's a universal fix. They reduced rubber banding when key events are triggered, such as the rocket launch sequence. The Conquest mode has had a lot of spawn locations adjusted to prevent spawning out of bounds. They fixed further instances of not being able to revive players when some of their body parts were clipping with other in-game assets or geometry, so hopefully being able to revive teammates is just universal now. You can do it all the time without any more bugs. Heads-up display changes had an extensive list of changes. They added scaling options for the mini-map, personal log, world log, player/vehicle info, chat, and vehicle passenger list. Heads-up display added the critical state for vehicles. They added new options that allow players to scale the transparency of many different icons in the heads-up display: friendly icons, squad member icons, enemy icons, revive icons, objective icons, and ping marker icons. Each icon type can have different transparency when zoomed or not zoomed. The options can be found under display heads-up display icons. They added a chat log visibility option to allow players to set the default visibility mode on the chat log. The grenade indicator no longer remains on screen after the grenade has already exploded. They added 24 new options to control the opacity and size of heads-up display icons. The recoilless M5, the RPG, or the small will now one-shot a ranger if it's a direct hit. This is a nice balance change. The active number of vehicles has now been adjusted across all maps and modes. This is intended to make vehicle dominance less common. A lot of lock-on issues seem to be addressed in this patch as well. They fixed an issue that would cause a missile launch to skip the yellow lock-on phase, jumping straight to the red phase. They fixed an issue that would allow players to instant lock onto a vehicle after flares have been used. This should greatly balance out and make infantry versus air combat much more predictable. The hovercraft also saw a bunch of its fun mechanics removed from it, which were technically bugs. It can no longer fly after hitting a ramp at high speeds, and they also tweaked the boost so that it will no longer go up vertical walls. Regarding the Bolt, it's seen quite a few changes, so if you use that vehicle a lot, you might want to just read the patch notes, but one of the better ones in my opinion is the ability to shoot passengers is going to be a lot easier. Now again, this patch list is extremely extensive. They've got a long list of changes to Hazard Zone even. I mean, there's just so many changes, animation changes, soldier changes, tons and tons of bug fixes. It's an impressive list of changes and quality of life updates. There's nothing dramatically new in terms of how the game is going to play or new content. Obviously, that's disappointing, but in terms of laying the groundwork for moving forward, this seems like it's going to be one of the more important quality of life updates for the game. I mean, if you were having weird bugs and just UI issues and weapons not performing the way they were, or things disappearing or things clipping. A lot of that should be fixed in this patch. It looks like a huge patch in that regard. Sadly, I don't think it's going to bring a lot of players back into the game simply because, well, just the game itself hasn't really been changed in any sort of substantial way. And there was no mention there of server browsers being updated to allow people to kind of try and search for full servers or full games. I've been seeing a lot of posts about people trying to get into the game and play against other players versus bots right now. And that is one of the bigger issues with the game. So while I think it's great that DICE is making all of these changes that are going to hopefully lay the groundwork for maybe doing a big revive for this game or getting it into a good place, I don't think there's enough here that's going to bring people back who haven't played the game in quite a while, because it's more or less just balance and quality of life updates, but not drastic overhauls. So if I had a message for the team, it'd be keep it up, keep going. I think the server browser still needs an overhaul to allow players to join matches without AI, or that aren't being dominated by AI, since it's not really set up for a low player population situation. For the player base, if you're enjoying 2042 right now, this patch is probably going to add a lot of nice balance and quality of life updates for everybody who's taken a step back from the franchise. This is a good update. It might bring you in for a day just to sort of feel the game functioning better, but I don't think it's going to excite people enough to pop out of whatever game they're normally playing and jump back into 2042. I think for that, we're going to need some new content, some specialist reworks, that kind of stuff before people start popping back in to check out 2042. As always, guys, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. This is Level Cap signing off.